Hello, we're continuing our breakdown of the factions of the zone as we wait for the release of the first DLC for S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, Cost of Hope. In the previous video I talked about the Freedom faction, and this time we'll be focusing on its direct opponent, Duty. These two factions will play a key role in the expansion, fighting for their own ideals and sphere of influence within the zone. In this video I'll tell you everything you need to know about Duty before jumping into the DLC. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment below it, it helps the channel grow, thank you. Duty is the oldest S.T.A.L.K.E.R faction with roots going all the way back to the zone's very first year of existence. Its core is made up of former military soldiers who were either abandoned by their command or cut ties with it themselves. Because of this, the faction as a whole has a strict, militarized character. Duty's main goal is the complete isolation and destruction of the anomalous zone and everything it has spawned. This is most clearly seen in their regular operations to clear territories of aggressive mutants. In the eyes of Dutyrs, the zone is a potential threat to the entire planet, as it is filled with dangerous anomalies and mutants, while also constantly expanding. As a result, they see themselves as defenders of humanity. This is also reflected in their logo. The Knight's Shield symbolizes protection and defense, while the crosshair is associated with discipline and readiness to fight against any threat. Duty's ideological opponent is a Freedom faction, which seeks to learn how to coexist with the zone. Because of this, the two factions have fought wars over the control of territories and spheres of influence. Like their opponents, Dutyrs have periodically explored unknown and hard-to-reach areas of the zone in search of a way to destroy it once and for all. Duty's popularity and strength have been steadily declining with each passing year. The ideological and propagandistic foundation that holds the faction together is weakening due to the lack of an external conflict and the changing attitude towards the zone itself. A serious blow to Duty's image and authority came when its leader, General Voronin, was forced to sign the so-called D4 Treaty. Under its terms, the wars with the Freedomers came to an end, and Duty's base at the Rostock factory was transferred under Freedom's control. Compliance with the terms of D4 was guaranteed by the Ward, whose goal is to study and control the zone, something that also undermined Duty's narrative. In the years that followed, Duty fully focused on securing its foothold in the northeastern part of the zone and exterminating mutants, whose population keeps constantly replenishing itself. This kind of stagnation does not sit well with many Dutyrs, who are defecting to Zulu's side, as he promises to find the root of all evil and wipe out every mutant once and for all. In response to this trend, General Voronin sends Zulu into the center of the zone to search for the reason behind the disappearance of Duty's first leader. After the anomalous zone formed in June 2006, the people responsible for the existence of the secret laboratories on its territory joined forces with the military to extract important documents from within the zone. This led to the creation of the Special Evacuation Squads, a member of which was a soldier called S.T.A.L.K.E.R. He was among the first to encounter anomalous formations, fight mutants and live to tell the tale. Most likely he was a part of the squad that headed towards the CNPP using the underground transport system known as the monorail. Fighting their way forward, the squad reached the laboratory X-19 beneath the station, where they managed to seize the portion of the documents. On the way back, a problem emerged. The tunnel they were supposed to use to leave the zone had collapsed. In the result, only two people made it back, one of whom may have been S.T.A.L.K.E.R. A few months later, in September 2006, a new military operation was launched under the name Perimeter. Its objective was to deliver a so-called charge, an experimental high-explosive device, into the center of the zone, with the intention to destroy the epicenter of the disaster. Captain S.T.A.L.K.E.R.'s company took part in the Operation Perimeter and managed to break through as far as the cement factory region. The military's plans were thwarted by an anomalous emission, a phenomenon no one had been familiar with yet, which instantly killed dozens of people. After this failure, the Ukrainian army abandoned the idea of conducting operations deep inside the zone for several years, instead focusing on isolating the zone from the outside world. Shortly after the mission, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. was informed that there would be no evacuation for the survivors. Driven by a desire for revenge, instead of once again trying to escape the zone, he cut off contact with headquarters and chose to stay. Vowing to fight the zone until the last breath, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. and his men formed the faction of Duty. The former captain assumed the rank of General of Duty and, over time, gathered other abandoned soldiers around him. despite having no anomaly detectors, no equipment to protect themselves from said anomalies, and very likely suffering from a shortage of sustenance, the faction survived until the beginning of the era of mass stalker activity in 2009. After experiencing the hostile nature of the zone firsthand, some stalkers even began joining the faction voluntarily. It is also possible that relations with the mainland were established during Tachenko's rule, as suggested by the fact that he wore a third-generation exoskeleton. At some unknown point between 2009 and 2011, Tachenko set out for the city of Limansk with a small group. There, the dutiers became trapped in a spatial anomaly, where lack of supplies and their gradual descent into madness led to their death, while General Tachenko ultimately shot himself. After Tachenko's disappearance, Krylov became the new General of Duty. Under his leadership, in 2011, the faction established its base in the Agroprom Research Institute. For several months, the dutiers explored the underground tunnels there, studying the local mutants. Unexpectedly, they came across the already abandoned laboratory X5, where they found documents detailing the scientists' work, including information on the Leash project. While attempting to collapse one of the tunnels with explosives, the dutiers accidentally brought down part of the walls, opening passages into caves filled with mutants. To stop the ever-growing flow of mutants, Krylov first ordered to seal off all access from the underground complex, and later struck a deal with the mercenary S.T.A.L.K.E.R to have him flood the area. As a result, the lower levels of X5 became completely inaccessible. At the same time, in September 2011, the super mission occurred, drastically shifting the position of anomalous fields across the zone and opening up new routes and territories. This sparked a conflict between duty and freedom over influence in the regions of Garbage, the Red Forest and the city of Limansk. The entire period came to be known as the Faction War. The active phase of the war did not last long, as another super mission soon cut off access to the Red Forest and Limansk, while both factions migrated to new lands. Due to the threat of mutants reappearing, Krylov decided to move Duty's base to the Rostok factory, while handing Agroprom over to the military, who continued searching for documents there. Later, Krylov passed command to the new general, Voronin, and his fate from that point on remained unknown. In the near future, the base at Rostok became popular among loner stalkers thanks to its relative safety, despite being located deep inside the zone. The 100 Res bar, run by Barkeep, opened on the premises, along with the arena where fights to the death were held, including battles involving mutants. The lack of active hostilities with freedom also contributed to its popularity, since General Voronin supported a policy of armed neutrality towards the faction. Most likely this was due to the need to defend Rostok from mutants, as well as freedom's defense of the so-called barrier in the north of the zone, an area constantly attacked by mutants and members of the Monolith faction. However, not all dutiers agreed with this idea. In the spring of 2012, Colonel Skull and several of his men deserted and headed to the army warehouses to attack Freedom's main base. There they blew up the wall on the western side of the warehouses and broke inside, but they underestimated the enemy's numbers, causing the assault to fail. Skull himself most likely died there, as the mercenary Skull, who operated in the following years, was not the same man. After S.T.A.L.K.E.R shut down the Brain Scorcher, Duty's actions almost mirrored those of Freedom. Duty squads rushed into the newly opened territories, seeking to expand their influence, find the Klondike of artifacts and the Wish Granter, and once again clashed with the Freedomers. Near Yanev station, a Duty squad led by Lieutenant Colonel Shulga encountered an opposing Freedom squad. The fight had to be stopped when the Duty Zulu sensed an approaching emission. Both squads were forced to take shelter together at the station, as it was the only reliable shelter from emissions in the region. There, the two sides agreed to a temporary truce, which lasted at least until August 2012, and split the station in half. During this period, an unpleasant situation emerged when Warrant Officer Morgan began selling equipment from Duty's secret warehouse to bandits and mercenaries. The outcome of the situation at Yanev remains unknown. Most likely, the factions were driven out by Colonel Dekhtярev's men, who would later form the corps. Another open question is Dekhtярev's discovery of Tachenko's death squad near the cooling tower. Heart of Chernobyl has yet to confirm what actually happened. The presence of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R detector in the DLC trailer, a device capable of detecting spatial bubbles, may suggest that it existed in the past as well. The same trailer also features Tachenko's lines, which can be heard on the PDA found on his corpse in Call of Pripyat. For now, we can only speculate. The truth will be revealed in the expansion. Even so, Duty had reached the height of its success, a series of critical mistakes and events eventually led to the faction's decline. In the winter of 2013, Freedom, having gathered a force not only from its own fighters, but also from stalkers from many corners of the zone, launched an assault on the Rostok factory. General Voronin personally commanded the defense of the base, and in the end, Freedom was forced to retreat. The very fact that the assault had taken place pointed not only to a failure of Duty's intelligence, but also to the faction's overall weakening, and to a shift in Stalker's perception of the zone. Another blow to Duty's reputation came with Voronin's decision not to launch a counterattack against Freedom, leaving its actions unpunished. These events would come back to haunt Voronin during the signing of the D4 treaty between Duty, Freedom, Ward and Noontide in the spring of 2013. Under this treaty, imposed by Ward under threat of destruction, peace was established between Duty and Freedom. Rostok came under Freedom's control, and Duty was forced to relocate to the cement factory near the cooling towers of the CNPP. Like Freedom, in the autumn of 2013, Duty assigned part of its manpower to take part in the Operation Zenith. This operation was meant to break through to the generators in the center of the zone, but it failed due to unpredictable local emissions in the region. In the years that followed, Duty continued to stagnate, bogged down in fighting local mutants and bandits. A certain ideological resurgence may have taken place after 2019, when the failed second Caribbean experiment was carried out. After that, anomalies began appearing on the mainland, making Duty's message about preventing the zone's expansion relevant once again. After the signing of D4, an internal split began to grow within the faction. The reasons behind it were the sharp decline in Duty's prestige, the weakening of its independence, and Voronin's tendency to preserve the lives of his men, which was perceived as indecision and weakness. Formally, Duty remained united, but de facto, the faction fragmented into several branches. Voronin's Duty continued to fulfill its obligation under D4, leading a relatively calm life at the cement factory, and generally reacting passively to the events unfolding around it. This does not sit well with many Duters, some of whom side with the ideological opposition led by Zulu, who wants to take active measures to destroy the zone. In addition to Duty's veterans, he also recruits rookie stalkers. There is also pro-war opposition that seeks to reignite the conflict with Freedom. For example, Duty's bartender Hera uses an informant at Rostok to find ways to inflict as much damage on Freedom as possible. Separate from Duty, the commissary gang operated in the Garbage region under Roosevelt leadership. Before the Signal, he was developing his gang in the spirit of Duty, and after the disappearance of Nestor, the boss of Garbage, he also laid claim to supremacy over the entire region. I'll talk more about commissary in one of the future videos. The turning point in Duty's history came in 2021, when C.A.L.K.E.R scientists conducted a failed experiment involving remote connection to the generators. As a result, under the influence of Psi radiation, members of the Noontide faction reformed the Monolith faction. The Monolithians launched a devastating campaign through Garbage, almost completely wiping out commissary and forcing Roosevelt and his men to flee the region. They also broke through to their former base in the 5th power unit of the CNPP in the Cooling Towers region, threatening Duty's positions. On top of that, Zulu's campaign in search of the reason behind Tachenko's disappearance was likely what caused D4 to be broken, leading to the renewed war between Duty and Freedom. Duty's external relations are limited but extremely important to the faction. Duters do not engage in active trade the way Freedom does. Instead, they maintain barter relations with scientists and by extension with the military. All artifacts they find are handed over to the scientists in exchange for weapons and equipment. This kind of cooperation has been going on for many years. In the past, Duties even guarded research bunkers. Duty also trades with individual stalkers who visit the cement factory. Some of them, such as Father Valerian's men, take on contracts to clear territories of mutants. Duty's likely competitors in this line of work are mercenaries, who capture mutants in neighboring regions. Aside from mutants, the Duters are also troubled by the constant presence of bandits in the region, which often leads to clashes. Control over the cooling towers in the north was useful not only to Duty but also to Ward and C.A.L.K.E.R. The 5th power unit of the CNPP is located there, containing an important note the scientists needed for remote connection to the generators. Because of this, Duty and Ward became allies and established limited cooperation. However, after the said connection attempt failed, the territory lost its importance, and the Wardens ceased all assistance. The D4 Treaty forbids any confrontation with freedom, which, as expected, outrages many duties. The clearest example of an indirect conflict with freedom can be seen in the ties between Duty's bartender, Hera, and the leader of the renegade bandits, Boss. Hera has helped him on several occasions by passing along information from an informant at Rostock. As a result, the renegades remained unpunished for a long time for blocking the trade routes through the Red Forest used by Freedom. There are also hints that Zulu once stole a large shipment from Rostock, killing the Freedom Guards in the process. In addition, the pro-freedom bandit clan Brute and Roosevelt's pro-duty commissary compete in the Garbage region. Many consider commissary the Duty's proxy, a gang the faction uses to spread its influence across Garbage, which is neutral territory under D4. In reality, however, Roosevelt is not welcome as a cement factory. His only contact there is Zulu, who shares equipment with him and may also shelter Roosevelt after the signal in the new expansion. For General Tachenko, nothing was supposed to stand in his way of the zone's complete destruction. He believed that a rigid, unshakable hierarchy, with himself at the very top, was the only way to survive and achieve victory. Tachenko was willing to make any sacrifice to achieve that goal, even if those sacrifices were his own men or himself. This determination and uncompromising resolve inspired both immense respect for him and fear among the dutiers. Tachenko personally led a group of fighters into the mysterious city of Limansk, where they would later become trapped in a spatial bubble. The dutiers wandered through the anomalous territory for days, unable to find a way out. If the events of Call of Pripyat are to be believed, Tachenko, with no hope of rescue, shot himself, and several years later his body fell out of the spatial anomaly. However, we can see the General of Duty alive in the DLC trailer, most likely at the Radio Wave Research Institute in Limansk. How is this possible remains unknown for now, but there are theories that it may be connected to the Psy embryo, the result of experiments carried out in the laboratory X-19. Tachenko may have had experience with the embryos as far as his time with the evacuation squads in 2006. Aside from simple falsification of his death, several theories have emerged about what really happened. This Tachenko may be nothing more than an illusion created by the Psy embryo, merely pretending to be the real Tachenko. He may also be the real Tachenko, but in the form of a noosphere projection, in other words, a manifestation of the subtle matter. According to my own, slightly more unhinged theory, the Psy embryo used its anomalous abilities to resurrect Tachenko by restoring his physical body. Ironically, the greatest supporter of wiping out the zone's plague may have become its defender instead. It would also be interesting to know whether Tachenko is even aware of Freedom's existence, since he disappeared before the first major conflict with them. Duty's current leader, Voronin, has also always believed in the idea of fighting the zone, as he himself was one of the first to join the faction. But over time, his priorities changed. He realized that he could not achieve the faction's goal on his own. Time spared Voronin neither physically nor psychologically. The general became more humane and stopped taking major risks, which created tension among the more radical elements within Duty. Still, he remains a respected and level-headed man, capable of making important decisions in the most critical moments. The DLC trailer shows that, at least in one possible branch of events, Voronin did not turn Zulu in when he violated the terms of D4, and instead tore up the treaty himself. As for Zulu himself, he is a man of action. His determination and desire to avenge his brother-in-arms against the zone earned him the respect of many dutiers. At the same time, he suffers from his uncontrollable fits of rage and his need for outside approval. In the worst cases, this led him to isolate himself from everyone, drowning his overwhelming sense of shame in vodka. Zulu is a duty veteran. His status rose noticeably during the period when Yanev station was occupied by Duty and Freedom. Back then, he left the faction and isolated himself in the tower near Yanev. Degtyarev, who was assembling a team for an expedition to Pripyat, helped him break out of that state. When they reached the city through the underpass beneath the Jupiter factory, Zulu abandoned everyone again after learning that Degtyarev worked for the SSU. Degtyarev then had to help Zulu once more when he was surrounded by mutants. After these events, Zulu returned to duty, but already after D4 he joined the opposition alongside other dissenting fighters. Without Voronin's approval, Zulu's men fought local bandits and recruited rookies. The DLC trailer hints that Zulu has established his own base near the destroyed generators at the CNPP. A less obvious but potentially important character in the DLC may be Captain Gromovy. He served in Tachenko's company back in 2006 and has been with duty since the faction very founding. Because of that, he may be able to provide new information about Tachenko or even meet him in Limansk. The expansion may also see the return of characters from the earlier games in the series, such as Shulga, who commanded the duty squad at Yanev station. He could become one of Zulu's supporters, as both of them were once part of the same squad. There is also a chance that Nitro, the former technician at the Yanev station, could make an appearance. Although he is not formally a duty, Nitro could join the squad of his old friend Zulu. Finally, unlikely as it may be, General Krylov's return is still possible. His strongly anti-freedom stance could play a role in the context of the new faction war. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts and ideas for future videos in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more quality Stalker lore. Good hunting, Stalker!